Would you like to improve your speaking skills? Well, you're in the right place. My name is Adam Montandon, and I'm a curator for TEDx Unsa. And in this little webcast, I'm going to show you some of the secret tips and tricks that I get up to behind the scenes to help make your speaking or your presentations better. So welcome. And if you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. And if you're watching this later on a replay, please put your comments and questions in down below, and I'll come back in a couple of days and answer them. So the first thing to know is that I'm living and working in Denmark in a city called Odense, and we're about the third biggest city in Denmark, so it's not huge, but we run a fantastic TEDx event called TEDx Odense, and not many people know the difference between TED and TEDx, but what the X means in TEDx is that it's an independently organized TED event. What that means is you've probably seen TED events on YouTube where somebody stands on a famous red dot and shares an idea worth spreading in 18 minutes or less. There's been thousands of videos on YouTube with millions and billions of views. So I'm sure plenty of you have seen a TED talk. Maybe you've dreamt of giving a TED talk yourself. But the X means that it's independently organized, which means that in different cities around the world, in hundreds of different cities around the world, there are different events run by different teams. Some of them are very small, some of them are very big, some of them happen in schools, in universities, in cities, in businesses, in prisons, on border walls, in airplanes, all over the place. You wouldn't believe where you can find a TEDx event. And what we try to do in TEDx Unsa is we try to find the most incredible, brilliant, unique ideas within our community and bring them up and share them with the rest of the world, with millions of subscribers on our YouTube channel. So you can come and see a live event, or you can go and experience it online completely for free. But what not many people know is that you don't just turn up with a TED Talk perfect and ready to go. We actually work really hard behind the scenes to get our speakers ready. And we will work typically 4 to 6 months on a person, on their script, on their performance, on their presentation skills. And we'll have, in the case of TEDx Unsa, we'll have about 6 to 8 people just working on their scripts and their presentations the whole time, and maybe another 40 or so people backstage just to make sure that that one speaker looks good. So if you see a TED Talk and think, wow, that's really brilliant, the reason why is there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and it's different to what you might expect. So today, I want to reveal some of those things. Now, I'm not going to be able to take you through the entire process. It's really way too long, but I want to give you the highlights that you can use so that the next time you're presenting in a meeting or at a conference or something like that, you can use some of these tips, and they might help you along your way to be just a little bit better. Now, let's get started. The first thing that you'll need to do, that you'll need to know, is that the only way to give an interesting talk is to live an interesting life. It's quite as simple as that. If you are a boring person, you will give a boring talk. There's no denying it. So if you're ever worried that you are a little bit boring, if your life is not that exciting, make sure that it is exciting. Put aside a budget to go bungee jumping or jumping out of an airplane, going skydiving, whatever it might be, to make your life more interesting. We've all been sat in boring talks and nobody likes them. Become an interesting person. It will make your stories more interesting. This is my number one tip, and people often get confused about that. They think, oh, isn't it all about how you present the information? Isn't it about how wonderful your PowerPoint is? To be honest, no. If you think about it, when you've been to parties, you've met people who just all of a sudden come off as the most interesting person that you've ever met in your life. And they could be talking about absolutely anything. They could be talking about a subject you've never heard of before. But if they've got that really interesting magnetic personality, people are really going to want to listen. And we've also been in the opposite, where we've had someone that we really want to listen to, we really want to learn from, and they're probably very intelligent and have great information, but they're just boring. I know I work in lots of universities, and there are so many professors that the students just fall asleep in the back of the classroom for, no matter how smart they may be. So watch out for that. If you want to give an interesting talk, live an interesting life. Simple as that. The next thing that I want to talk about is the four things to avoid. There are four key things that we always try to avoid no matter what. The first thing that we really try to avoid is what we call the promotion, the sales pitch, the buy my products kind of thing. It's just cheesy, it's cheap, and the truth is, if you're up on stage, you don't need to sell. Because there are people who will love what you do, and if they love what you do, they will come and they will seek out whatever product or service it is that you offer. You don't have to come and give your presentation wearing your logo on your t-shirt. You don't have to end with a big call to action that says, buy my product now. Forget about it. If you're interesting, if you're building a relationship with a room full of people, you don't need to sell to them. The second thing, thing number two to really avoid is the improvisation. If you just think, I'm just going to make up as I go along what I'm going to talk about, this is really no good. You owe it to your audience to be well prepared and be well planned. So don't ever improvise anything. Don't leave anything to chance. Rehearse, and get it absolutely perfect. It will build your confidence, and it will show to the other people that they really respect, that you really respect their time and their effort and their energy. So don't improvise. Even if you think you can just wing it, trust me, you can't. The third thing to avoid, and I see this a lot, is what we call the organizational bore. This happens all the time in commercial presentations, and it's usually when someone's boss has asked somebody else to give a talk or a presentation on their behalf. The organizational bore is where you tell people about the entire organizational structure of your company, and you say, well, I arrived in the company in 1982, and then I handed over to Derek, who became the head of finance, and then Jeffrey came on board, and thanks to the hard work of Susan and her team, etc., etc. And it's boring, and you're almost spelling out the entire hierarchy. Oftentimes people are tempted to do this sort of organizational bore presentation because they're presenting on behalf of their boss or their management, or their boss or management has told them that they have to give this talk. Now, I'm going to be really honest. If your boss or your manager ever asks you to give a talk, what you really want to do is say, I'm going to give the talk the way that I want to. If you think that it's important that I say certain things, you're the one who should get up on stage and do it, because what's important to you is not important to me. You don't want to see these talks that are like your boss talking through you. It's awful. And the fourth thing to really avoid, and people are shocked when I tell them this one, is the inspirational speech. Completely forget it. So many people watch TED Talks and TEDx talks, and they feel very inspired at the end. They feel really motivated. Yeah, I can change the world. I can do anything. So then they think, okay, if I'm going to give a talk like that, I should give a message. Yeah, change the world. You can do anything. Follow your dreams. But that's really hollow, and it's really empty, because telling people to follow their dreams and change the world, yeah, sure, great. But what we really want to know is how. If something's you can inspire somebody without being an inspirational speaker. So I want you to forget about it. And I'll tell you the truth. We have open applications. Anybody in the world who wants to come onto our TEDx stage can apply to come on. And for every person that we get who wants to talk about a scientific breakthrough or a medical breakthrough or something interesting, we get about 100-to-1 ratio of people who present themselves as inspirational speakers. And I'll say, so what's your talk about? My talk's about believing in myself. Oh, and why do you believe in yourself? So you can follow your dreams. Why would you follow your dreams? So you can believe in yourself. It's like, it's crazy. So we actually have a button on our form where we say, what are you going to talk about? And if anybody ticks the button, I'm talking about following your dreams or believing in yourself, we instantly delete those applications because we get so many and it's just completely hollow. So avoid the promotion, the improvisation, the organizational bore, and the inspirational talk. Completely cut those out. Now, some of the things that we like to think about is we like to think about that we're not really giving a talk, but we're giving a gift. And when you give a gift to somebody, you make sure that it's perfect. You make sure that it's something that they're going to love and they're going to unwrap. There's going to be an element of surprise. There's going to be an element of mystery. And you find the absolutely perfect gift for a person that you care about. And in reality, a talk is like a gift. You're giving it to somebody else. So don't make something that's self-serving. As I mentioned, don't try to sell. Try to give something that people will really value. And that can be tricky because we're tempted to sell, we're tempted to serve ourselves, but imagine like you're giving a gift. One of my favorite TEDx talks that we ever worked on was a guy. He was a rapper from India. He was a #1 rapper. He was really great, really smart, and he was used to talking to thousands of people, and he would give thousands of people really good messages, really positive messages. But I asked him, he just had a little daughter. And I said, instead of imagining that we're going to give this talk to thousands of people, what if we imagine that we're only going to give this talk to one person, and it's your daughter? And she's only a little girl. She's about 3 years old. But what would you want her to know? What would you say to her? And it turns out what you would tell your daughter about your subject is infinitely different to what you would tell your business partners. But it was full of so much love and care and attention that it changed his talk into something deeply personal and deeply relevant for one person. And the rest of the audience got to watch that. And you think, wow, if that's what you would tell to your own kid, then that's something that I can really believe in quite genuinely. So give a gift, not a talk. Another tip is to start where the audience is. Oftentimes, the audience does not know anything about you. They might not even particularly like you. They might not even want to hear your talk. So start where they are. That means thinking about which kind of jargon you might use, thinking about what kind of terms they might know. You might have been working in your industry for 20 years and the audience is just getting into it. And that's why they're here to listen to you talk. So make sure that you start where the audience is every time, because then you can help them. And how you help them is, I want you to imagine that each step in your talk is kind of like a journey, and you're taking the audience with you. You literally have to take the audience by the hand and say, come on, I'm going to show you what's special about my world. I'm going to show you what's magical, what's unusual, what's fantastic. And you might not know all these things, but I'm going to take you step by step by step so that we understand it. And that's a beautiful thing to do. Now, I have, just checking the comments, and it's great to see there's so many comments. Please do ask a few questions. And I have some more tips that I'd like to share with you. So let's go through. And one of my favorite tips is I work a lot with people who've never, ever spoken in public before. And most of them don't speak English as their first language, not at all. In fact, living in Denmark, nearly everybody, of course, has Danish as a first language. Maybe English is their second language. Maybe they get freaked out, maybe because of their pronunciation, because of their accent, or because they're missing certain words. If that's you, if you're ever worried that you've got to speak in English, but it's not your native accent, please don't panic. The important thing to know is that people love it when you're trying hard to speak a different language. So if you've got different problems with your language, if you use the wrong words or you're worried about forgetting the words, that's perfectly okay. In fact, it's really endearing to the audience. Audiences love it. And in fact, if you can't find the right word to say, use the word from your own language and teach the audience, oh yeah, in Danish, we say this. We use this specific word to describe the thing that we're talking about. And that way, the audience learns something new as well, and they come on board with it. So please don't panic if English is not your first language and you've got to speak in English. Another thing that you can do to really make your life better is to really get prepared for your speech and really, really plan. Now, I coach hundreds and hundreds of people each year and hundreds of students, and especially PhD students. And maybe you've had to give a presentation too. And maybe you've done this. If you had to give a presentation, you've probably gone onto Google and you've typed in presentation tips or something like that. If anyone has done this, leave this in the comments. And usually the first presentations tip that you'll ever see is go and practice in front of a mirror. If you've heard of that, like go stand in front of a mirror, look, practice your talk in front of a mirror. If you've heard of that one, leave me a little comment. I want to find out who's heard that one. And so everyone says, yeah, that's good advice. I should go and I will practice my talk in front of a mirror. And what happens is everybody knows this and they get up to go and practice in front of the mirror. They go to the bathroom, they stand in front of the mirror, they look there, they take a deep breath, they look themselves straight in the eye and they go, oh, I'll be all right, I'll be all right. And they don't even practice in front of the mirror. They can't even bring themselves to do that. So if you're in a competitive situation, if you're pitching or presenting in an exam or in a business situation, and you practice in front of a mirror, you will instantly be more well rehearsed than everybody else, because everybody else is too afraid to even face themselves in the mirror. They think that they're just going to wait. So the more that you can practice, the better, even if it's on the most basic level. To be honest, to be better than 50% of the competition, you don't need a professional speaker coach. You can just go onto Google, you can practice in front of your friends, and that will improve you massively, because nobody really practices unless we get serious about it. So that's my top tip. Another thing to know is, especially if you're speaking in front of larger audiences or at schools or at universities or something like that, I want you to know that everybody in the audience is your friend. I've heard people say, oh, imagine the audience is naked, or imagine that the audience is like big teddy bears or something. And that doesn't really make sense for me. What I like to do is imagine that everybody is your friend. We often say that giving a TEDx talk isn't really a talk. It's like throwing a dinner party for 1,000 of your closest, most personal friends. Because when you're in front of your friends want to cheer you on. They want to support you. When you go to a conference or something like that, you never, ever turn to your friend and say, hey, this next speaker, I hope he's terrible. I hope he really sucks. I hope his PowerPoint is awful. I hope he forgets his words, and I hope he's boring. Nobody wants you to be boring. Nobody wants you to be dull. Nobody wants you to make a mistake. They all hope that you're interesting. They hope that you're exciting. So bear that in mind when you know that everybody is your friend. And another thing that you can do is to understand that people really are interested in what you have to say. You just have to say it well, and that comes from practice. Now, one of the ways that I like to practice is this. Now, you will all have your favorite songs, right? Everybody's got that favorite song that's their karaoke classic, that when it comes on in the car, your lips just start moving and you go along with it. When a bit of Beyonce comes, I'm dancing around to All the Single Ladies as I'm driving in my car, in my commute, for sure. We all have it. And it means that no matter how drunk you are when you're at the karaoke, you can always bust out a bit of Beyonce or a bit of whatever is your favorite. But we don't really do that for public speaking. And it's crazy because we have such a resource when you're looking at YouTube and things like that, where you can go onto YouTube and you can find who are your favorite speakers. Maybe you're really into Winston Churchill, maybe you're really into Tony Robbins, maybe you like a certain politician, whatever it is. Why not find whoever is your favorite speaker, why not watch and listen to the best speeches that really inspire you, to the point where you can almost lip dub along with the speech, so that you can sing along with it in the car, the same as you were singing with Beyonce. Because if you can sing to Beyonce, you can lip dub along to Martin Luther King or something like that. And that will really help you to understand what's great about your hero's style, to understand their sense of phrasing, their sense of emphasis. Yeah, I would really give that a go. That's something that you can really do. Another thing that really helps is to find your own rhythm and poetry. Find your own rhythm and poetry. I love to study poetry, because the beautiful thing with poetry, if you really study it, is that you understand that you can say an awful lot with very few words. And in a TEDx talk, we'll take maybe someone's entire life story, or 4 years of PhD research, or 20 years of experience, and cram it down into 18 minutes. And in many ways, that's impossible, but we do it by being a little bit more poetic, because sometimes you can read a beautiful poem and the words don't really make sense. The grammar doesn't really make sense, but you build in yourself a beautiful picture of what the person is trying to convey. Poets can create wonderful images in your mind. So the more that you can expose yourself to different kinds of poetry, the better. So what we do in our family, and I actually went to lots of large consulting companies, and many of the managers and executives said they really use this tip. And what it is every day when you're with your family, sit around the dinner table, and you should have lots of books of poetry right by your dinner table, all kinds of different stuff, whatever is your favorite. And if you want to eat dessert, you have to read a poem. So if you've got kids, they can read some great kids poems, maybe some Roald Dahl, some Michael Rosen, something like that. Maybe you want to break out a bit of Shakespeare one day, whatever it is, some short poems. If you want your cake, if you want your desserts, you've got to share a poem. And I even have a family poem that I printed out big that's right by the door. So make sure that your family has a poem as well, something that you can all talk about and find some interest in. And this can really help you deliver the sense of rhythm and poetry. Also, an extension to this is I like to go around with a physical notebook and collect my own favorite words and phrases that become part of my poetic language. Because sometimes you will hear something or you will see something that you just think is absolutely fantastic and absolutely unusual. And if you keep it written down, you can then go out and use it again, and it becomes the things that you are interested in. What I mean by that is everybody uses the same phrases and the same cliches, but what happens if you can say the same thing in a different way? So I'll tell you what I mean. I'm working a lot in education, and I was at an educational workshop with an old Danish guy with a big beard, and his English was not so good. And what he was trying to say was, I want my students to think outside the box. And this is such a cliche. This is such a normal thing. Every teacher has probably said, oh, I'd like my students to think outside the box a little bit more. That's a really normal thing to say. Everybody says it. And he couldn't remember the words for thinking outside the box. He knew there was a phrase, but he couldn't quite get it. So he looked and he said, I want my students to do violent things with their minds. And I love that, to do violent things with their minds. Who says that? Who says that? Nobody says that. That's crazy. And I love that phrase so much. And I wrote it down and collected it. And then I had to give a talk about education. And instead of saying, I want my students to think outside of the box, I say, I want my students to do violent things with their minds. And the whole audience was like, yes, this is it. You're exactly encapsulating the moment and the intensity of it. Now, if I'd have said think outside the box, they went, yeah, whatever, but do violent things with your mind, that's powerful. So collect all of these little phrases. You'll hear little snippets from songs, you'll hear little quotes, you'll see kind of things from books everywhere. Collect them so that they become your language and you develop your own style as a speaker. So this can be a really nice thing to do. So that's what I wanted to share. There's one final tip that's really important to remember, and it's a little bit heartbreakingly true. And in many ways, it's that nobody really cares about the story you tell. What people care about is the story that they hear. The story that people hear is very different from the story that you tell. And for example, maybe you've had this conversation with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your husband or your wife, and you get a little message and it says, "We need to talk." So the story that they tell is, "We need to talk." But the story that you hear is, "Oh my God, what did I do wrong now? How many flowers am I going to have to buy to get me out of this situation? What's going on here?" So the story that you hear is very different from the story that you tell. So what I often do is I run a workshop exercise where I get somebody to tell their story, and I have another person opposite them writing down what they hear. And it was really funny because one time I was with an executive and he was telling the story that he'd just gone and bought a very nice, very expensive sports car, and it was really fast and really flashy and really expensive. He loved it. And he was talking about how business is like a sports car. Yeah, life in the fast lane. And the person who was listening to him was writing down what he heard. And I looked at his sheet of paper and I said, "Well, what did you hear?" Because he'd only written one word in big in the middle of the paper. And I looked at that word and it just said douchebag. And I love this moment because there's this moment where one guy thinks that what he's saying is, "I'm impressive, I'm powerful, I'm fast, I'm successful." But what the audience hear is, actually, you're a bit of an idiot. So a wonderful thing that you can do is really try to understand what the audience is going to hear more than what you're going to say. And how you do that is practice your talk and then have another person tell that talk back to you a little bit later on. My favorite thing to do with this is, if you haven't got a person to practice your talk with, phone up your grandmother right away. Granny always loves to hear from you. And if your grandmother is no longer with you, pick another random grandmother. The grannies love to talk. And what you do is you tell them, you practice your entire talk over the phone, and then you call them back a couple of days later and say, "What was it we were talking about last time, Granny?" And maybe she will only remember 3 or 4 sentences of your entire half an hour talk. And but those 3 or 4 sentences will be the most important ones, the most memorable ones, the most impactful. So always remember, it's not really about you and it's not really about your story, but it's about the story that you wanted to hear. So that's what I wanted to share with you. It's lovely to see some of the comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions at all. If you're interested in giving a TEDx talk, if you're interested in presenting better, then that's perfectly fine. I do write a blog. If you would like to check that out, the website is gopublicspeaking.com. It's all there. Whatever like random stuff comes out of my brain, I try to keep that updated. I put scripts on there and talk about how we find things, how we deal with different speakers, all kinds of stuff. So if you'd like to check that out, and I'll put a link in the comments below as well. If you need some more, but you can always get in contact with me directly through the Niche Marketing Hero group. And I hope that it's brought some value to you. I hope that you found some of this interesting. And as you can tell, I could talk about this for hours and hours because it's my absolute passion. And yeah, and if you're running, if anybody's involved with a school or something like that, where you think that it's important that people learn these kind of skills, then do let me know and I'll see if I can come help you out, because I run all kinds of free workshops. If any of you are in Denmark as well and want to come to a completely free workshop, then you can. TEDx is a non-profit organization, TEDx Odense, I run in Denmark. So it's completely for volunteers. So this is my fun job. This is not my day job. My regular day job is as a professor and teacher. So I love to share this stuff with you. And if you're interested, you can check out my TED Talks. I have 2 TEDx talks in Austria, that you can go check out. They're a little bit old now, so I'm a little bit embarrassing. Maybe I won't link to them. I don't know. And I probably break many of the tips that I've shared with you today, but that's just how it goes. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really look forward to seeing the rest of you on the Niche Marketing Hero Facebook group. So thank you very much, David, for organizing this, and yeah, that's it. See you later. Bye.